Hey, what's up guys? My name is Ben. Today we're going to be talking about how to buy a used car that is reliable under $2,000. Now, if you've been listening to Dave Ramsey for even a little bit amount of time, you've heard him probably tell you to sell your car.
You should sell the car. To pay it off within 2 years, you do need to sell it.
The reason is because a lot of us buy cars that are way out of our price range and we end up having a really big payment on our hands that we can't really afford. So if you're in need of getting rid of some debt, or you don't have a vehicle right now and you need to buy a reliable one for a cheap price, today is all about how to do that, because Dave Ramsey says that you should do it, but he doesn't really talk about how to do that in a real life, real world scenario. So today is all about that. Now, the reason I feel like I can even talk about this is because I've done this on 2 separate occasions, and both of them were for under $2,000, and they ended up being really reliable cars that I really enjoyed driving. Now, the first one was for myself, and the other one that I bought was for my mom. Now, if you're ever in charge of buying your mom a reliable car, you really want to do your research here, because man, it was a lot of weight on my shoulders, but thankfully we got a really good car for a really good price. Now we're going to go over how to do this, but at the end I'm going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of purchasing a vehicle for a cheap price, even if it's reliable. So let's get straight into it. The website you're going to want to use to buy this car is going to be Craigslist. Now, before you go all crazy on me like,
oh my gosh, Ben, Craigslist, this is ridiculous. Why would I ever buy something off of that?
Believe me, there are actually good sellers out there, and you hear all the bad situations and all the bad things that happen or whatever. But in my case, I bought 2 different cars, and both times the sellers were really nice people and they're really easy to work with. But I will say that you're going to want to meet in public. You're going to want to make sure that you can meet them in public. And if you have to meet them at their house because the car is there for whatever reason, make sure you take someone else with you, someone that you trust, someone that can have your back in case things ever go south.
Run.
Which they shouldn't, guys. Don't worry about that. I'm just throwing that out there because that's just the kind of disclaimer, all right? So before you go on Craigslist, you're gonna wanna know what you're looking for, all right? So I'm gonna put a link to another video that I thought this guy did a really good job of breaking down really reliable cars that are older. So I'm gonna link it in the cards right here. You guys can go back and see that a little bit later. But really quickly, here's just the list, the screenshot of the list, so that you can see what exact cars and what exact years are gonna be reliable to look for. So my favorite of all of these cars by far is the Honda Accord, anywhere from 2001 to 2002. For some reason, this car seems to be everywhere, and I think it's because it's such a reliable car, and because of that reason, I think that you're gonna be able to find it in your area rather quickly. All right, so first things first, you're gonna wanna head over to Craigslist and go ahead and create a free account if you don't already have one. It's really simple. Go ahead and go to the for sale and go to cars and trucks right here. Then over to the left side right here, you're gonna wanna go to make and model, and for this example, we're gonna be using the Honda Accord. So I'm just gonna type that in right there. Model year, I'm gonna put 1980 to 2002 just to get some results here. And typically those are really good years to look for. And as you can see right here, we have a car for $3,300. Now, even though that's out of the price range, I would still click on it, because if it's been on here for a while, the owner might be more interested in selling it for a cheaper price, and you might get by with buying it for $2,000. So as you can see, there's not a ton of info. You know, it does have, oh my goodness. You know, it does have the odometer right here. That's not bad at all for this car. In fact, that's really low. And that's probably why they're asking $3,300, because there's not a ton of miles. This car can easily run 250,000 miles, no problem. So I would consider calling this guy and just, you know, telling him, hey, all I've got is $2,000. I got it cash right now in hand. I could purchase this car today if you're willing to sell it. And you might get a hit from that. So I would consider doing that. But if not, I would just back out here and continue to look. The results are showing up here that there's not a ton in my local area, but there are a few nearby. So La Feria, Texas is not that far from me. It's about a 40-minute drive. And so I could definitely go check this car out if I really liked it. Right here, we see the odometer is 220,000. That's pretty typical for this make and model. And the title is clean. You're gonna wanna make sure that whatever car you buy, that the title is clean. And you don't wanna have issues whenever you're trying to get the car in your name, or, you know, trying to get your insurance and that kind of stuff. It's really gonna be a hassle if the title's not clean. Now, the only other one you can work with that you'll get by with is a salvage title. And salvage title just means that at some point the car was in a wreck and they fixed it and they repaired it. So just make sure if you're driving or you're test driving a car like that, that it's in working order and it's not wobbling around on the road and stuff like that. So right here, I would definitely go talk to this guy. It's $1,800, right in my price range. I would try to get him down to $1,500, because it does, you know, it needs some hubcaps and stuff like that. So I would try to even, you know, offer 15 to begin with. They might let it go for that. Then some other options here are car. This 95 Honda Accord looks like a really good deal for 1,200 bucks. Not sure how many miles it has. It probably has a good amount of miles. The seats are a little cracked, so it's not in the greatest condition, but the title is clean. Now, this is in San Antonio, Texas, which is about 4 hours from where I live. But for 1,200 bucks, if I'm gonna save $800, then it might be a really good deal to drive up there with somebody. You know, you're gonna need to take someone with you anyway to go to someone's house and look at the car. So it could be worth the trip. But I will say, if you're gonna take a trip somewhere, look in that general area for other cars of those make and models that I showed you guys earlier, so that you can line up a few appointments so that the first one doesn't fall through and then you don't end up getting a car at all and you waste the trip. So those are just a few quick examples of how to find a car on Craigslist for a decent price in your area. And right after this, you're gonna wanna go to Kelley Blue Book. Now, this is just a website that will tell you how much the car is actually worth for the miles that it has, for the make and model that it is. So you could get a really good estimate of what you should actually pay for the car. And this could also help you bring the cost down a little bit. So speaking of blue things, you see that little gray thumb thing over there? Yeah, if you could turn that blue, that would be awesome as well if you guys are enjoying this video. Next, you're gonna need to reach out to the seller. I prefer to do this via text, but you can do this over the phone, doesn't really matter, or use their email if they don't leave their number in the description. Now, the next thing is gonna be test driving your car. Once you find a car that you really like, go ahead and go over and test drive it. Here's the things that you're gonna wanna make sure work before you purchase the vehicle. You're gonna wanna make sure that the brakes work really good, that the lights on the front and back of the car work, along with the wipers and the horn. Now, the reason you wanna check these things is because that's what someone who is gonna be giving an inspection of your car is going to look at. So if it automatically doesn't have some of those things, then you won't get passed for an inspection, you won't be able to get insurance, and you won't be driving legally on the road, and that's just not a good idea, because tickets for that are super expensive if you don't have insurance on your vehicle. And I just, yeah, it's happened to me before, so yeah, just don't do it. The first car I actually bought, I test drove, and the brake lines busted as I was test driving it. Now, this may seem like a really bad thing to you, but it actually really helped, because the guy wanted $1,500, but I knew based off of the call that I had made to my mechanic, I was like, hey, how much would it cost to replace some of the brake lines in my car if they busted? And he gave me around $250. So I told him, hey, I'm gonna have to pay for these brake lines to be fixed. Would you take $1,250 for it? And he actually took it. And so I was able to get the price down a little bit, and I drove straight to the mechanic right after that with my emergency brake, and I had him fix it, and it only cost right around $250. So I was all in at $1,500 on my first car, and it was working really good, and I was able to drive it right away. So let's get into some of the advantages of owning a car outright versus having to pay for payments. And the first one is the most obvious. You're gonna be able to save so much money. Realistically, a new car is a liability, because you're gonna be paying for it, and it's not gonna be increasing in value over time, and it's not really even gonna maintain its value. So purchasing a liability just isn't a good idea, especially if you don't need to have a really high car payment. Now, a disadvantage is that there's gonna be a lot more likelihood that something goes wrong with your car, because it's gonna be older. But here's also the good thing. The parts on these types of vehicles are really cheap, and they're usually really easy to fix. I mean, I remember my radiator busted. Like there was some type of leak or something, and I went online on YouTube and I found a video that taught me how to replace it myself. And I just bought the part, I got the mechanic price for it, so it came out to 100 bucks. And so I replaced my radiator, which I am not a car person, guys. I replaced it in like 2 hours is all it took me. I needed like 3 or 4 tools, that was it. I went to my father-in-law's house because I didn't even have tools to work with, and I got all the tools and I replaced it myself, and I was back on the road. If I would have taken that to a mechanic, it would have taken me at least 3 days to get it completely fixed, because the guy was swamped, and I would not have had a car for the weekend at all. And so, man, what's really good about these vehicles is that there's a lot of resources online, because they are so reliable and many people have had them. The repairs on them are pretty widespread, and you can find what you're looking for pretty fast on YouTube. Now, another advantage is that it just gets you from point A to point B. Right now, if you don't have a car and you're looking for something, this is gonna be a huge step up. If you're used to walking everywhere or taking a bike, man, having a car is so much more convenient, and this is an obvious advantage. A disadvantage of this, though, is that you're probably not gonna look cool to the people around you, to your friends, to your family. They're not gonna think that this is great, you know, like you got a decent car for a decent price. They're not gonna be looking at it, because it's not gonna be the most extravagant thing from the outside. But here's the thing, man, it's gonna also teach you not to care what people think about you. Think about it. If you had a ton of money in the bank and you chose to drive this thing, you probably wouldn't feel that bad. But if you knew your bank was really low and this was all you could afford, you'd probably feel insecure about driving this thing down the road. But that's just something, man, you're gonna have to get over, because people are gonna think what they think, and as as long as you can get from point A to point B and you're saving money, that's a positive thing for you. So don't look at it as a negative, because people are just gonna think what they think, man. Let them, okay? This is your life, this is your financial situation. So after you drive it for a few years, the cool thing about these cars is that if you're ever in a financial situation to get a new one or to get something else that you can actually afford now because you've saved so much money, you can actually get rid of this car for right around the same price, if not more, because they maintain their value over time. So really, you're not purchasing a liability in this sense, you're purchasing an asset, because an asset increases in value or maintains its value over time. And so if you're using it and it's not depreciating, then realistically, you're getting more out of that vehicle if it just maintains its value and you can sell it for the same exact price later. So those are some of the advantages and disadvantages. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and that you're encouraged to go out and make this happen for yourself, because I can guarantee you that even if things go wrong, you're gonna learn how to be resourceful. You're gonna maybe learn a new trait and feel empowered to do things on your own. I know that's something that happened to me when I got a vehicle like this. I learned a lot more about cars and taking care of them. Why? Because I used my money to purchase it outright, so I took good care of it. And also, whenever things did go wrong, I just went straight to YouTube and found a solution, and it was pretty simple, pretty easy, and very affordable, because these cars are reliable and they're easier to fix because of the way that they're built. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate a comment. It would help the engagement on this video. You can just go put "sell your car, buy a beater." That would really help out, guys. And before I go, I always shout out my wife Holly, because she does sell life insurance full time. So if you're ever needing a quote, no matter how old you are, no matter your financial situation, man, plans start at like 20 bucks a month and they go up from there depending on what you want. So feel free to shoot her an email. Her email is going to be in the description, and you can get a free quote anytime you want. Thanks for watching. I'm Ben. Garcia in the next one.